all ecosystems on this planet have the same general way that we measure their health, whether you're talking about the Amazon rainforest or you're talking about your gut microbiome. You personally listen right now at home. The way that we measure the health of these ecosystems is biodiversity. Biodiversity leads to balance. It leads to harmony. Every single creature, every single plant, every single organism that's alive has a role in that ecosystem. And when you start to remove pieces of that puzzle, you can create holes that cannot be filled. So there's a formula that I lay out in the book. Prebiotics, which are basically food for the microbes, plus probiotics, which are, like, most people will hear that and think of the capsule that contains live microorganisms, but I'm actually just talking about the bacteria in your gut. Prebiotics, fiber, plus probiotics equals postbiotics. Let me make an analogy. You go to a beautiful restaurant and they have all these nice plant-based ingredients and they have a world-class chef. Now you go to the restaurant and hey, it's nice. I love that they have all these nice ingredients that they sourced from the farmer's market. And I love that they have this world-class chef. But you know what? I'm there for the meal. And that's conceptually similar to what's happening with postbiotics in our gut. Prebiotics are the ingredients. The probiotics are the chef. But at the end of the day, it's not about the ingredients. It's not about the chef. It's about what the chef prepares, because that's what's going to have effects on your body. And postbiotics that come from fiber are healing.
That was Dr. B, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, and he is this week's guest on the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. And my name is Dr. B as well, Dr. Benjamin Alter, that is, and I am the host of this podcast, also a licensed naturopathic doctor, practicing holistic lifestyle medicine all over the world. Find out more at www.alter.health. Learn how we can support you in being your own healer by empowering you with all of the essential information related to whole food, plant-based nutrition, and mind-body medicine. This week on the podcast, we've got the Gut Health MD. That's his social media handle, and he is a digestive health expert, a gastroenterologist with a lot of experience in healing the gut. So this conversation is a great one, you guys. Really important information. We have jam-packed lots and lots and lots of information in this conversation, and it all is coming out of Dr. B's recently published book called Fiber Fueled. This book is awesome, you guys. It's not a diet book. It's a book about health and healing. And one thing I really love in the Fiber Fueled book is the plant points. And at the end of the book, towards the end of the book, he's talking about getting plant points. And really what plant points are is just eating more plants. And that's what it's all about. That's what it all boils down to in a nutshell, is just eating more plants. And as we do so, we eat less of those things that aren't plants that can get in the way of our body's ability to heal. So to be more scientific and specific around what we're talking about in today's episode, we're talking about the microbiome. We're talking about what the microbiome is and what an optimal, healthy microbiome looks like. We're talking about dysbiosis, what the heck that is, and why dysbiosis is really at the root of so many, if not all, digestive complaints. We talk about prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. Postbiotics being a new term to me, something that I learned today, and how all of these things are really intricately connected to your gut health and your health in general. And we talk about the sensitive gut. We talk about healing the sensitive gut. So if you've got a sensitive gut, if you've got digestive issues, you're definitely going to want to tune in and stay tuned. And we also talk about the relationship between stress, anxiety, and our gut health. And we just really skim the surface here, but this is really at the core of my practice. And really, the way I see it in my experience, it's so hard to really heal a gut without also having an understanding of stress, where stress comes from, and cultivating a healthy relationship with our stress, with our emotional world. So our guest today, like I said, Dr. B, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. He is a board-certified gastroenterologist and gut health expert. Every day, he helps patients and members of his #PlantFed community bounce back from restrictive and overhyped diets and into a whole new way of living and eating that produces the results they really want permanently. At the core of his philosophy is what he calls lifestyle medicine, that uses food, exercise, and other lifestyle factors to optimize your gut, get you back in control of your health. And through his upcoming book, Fiber Fueled, and free tools, Dr. B breaks it all down for you piece by digestible piece so you can take the simple steps that will help you create incredible shifts in your digestion, symptoms, and life. And for more from Dr. B, say hi to him on Instagram or Facebook at the Gut Health MD. But lastly, before we dive in, just one quick announcement related to Alter Health. We have some exciting things coming in our plant-based and stress-free Facebook group. This is a free online community, and we run these whole food plant-based challenges in our community. And we've got one coming up starting May 25th. We're calling this one the Stress-Free Series because, like I just already talked about, stress is such an important part of our health as it relates to our digestive system and our health in general. And we know that stress can sabotage our well-being, but we want to support you in really getting a grasp of where stress comes from and what we can actually do about it. We're also, of course, going to be covering a lot of essential information as it relates to honing in your whole food plant-based diet, taking it to the next level. So if you'd like more information about the upcoming Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge in the Plant-Based and Stress-Free Facebook group, you can head on over to www.alter.health/WFPB-challenge and register for free today. So that's all I got for you. I hope you do enjoy this conversation with our guest, Dr. B, the Gut Health MD. Be sure to reach out to him on Instagram or Facebook. Be sure to grab a copy of his new book, Fiber Fueled. It's great. Put your feet on the ground, take a breath, exhale, let it go, and enjoy this wonderful conversation with Dr. B. All right. Well, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast, or Dr. B as you like to go by, which I am also a Dr. B, but that's my first name, but some people do call me Dr. B. Anyways, welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast.
The two Dr. Bs. I have to tell you, I'm very impressed right off the bat because you said my name with great confidence and you said it accurately and you never even practiced in front of me.
I didn't practice in front of you, but you do on your website say like, a phonetic, this is how you say my name. But I did, you're right. Thank you for acknowledging my confidence. I did even put it like a Vitz is like, would you even say there's a Vitz in there?
Okay. So what you're doing is you're actually going back to Eastern Europe. Okay. It's a Polish name and you're kind of hitting on exactly the right way to say it, which would be Bulsiewicz.
Oh.
And it kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. But the problem is that my family came to the United States, like 4 generations ago.
Right.
And over 4 generations, it's become an Americanized name, where people just read it like an English word. So, but yeah, no, you're right. It's the WICZ is really more of a Vitz.
Yeah.
Kind of like it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, fellow Eastern European mutt over here. Nice to connect, and really excited to talk to an expert on gut health, because I think that we live in a world today where so many people are claiming their expertise in some way, shape, or form, some area of life, but it seems like you really are a gut health expert. You are the Gut Health MD on Instagram, and you're a gastroenterologist and you've been doing this for your career. You're not just like a blogger, YouTuber, even though you do that well also.
Yeah, all that stuff, me on the internet is like a side hobby. That's something that I just kind of started doing for fun. But what I do for a living is I'm a gastroenterologist. I see patients. I do that full time. I continue to do that full time, and it's a passion of mine. So I enjoy doing it. In the same way that you, I'm sure, have passion for what you do in your clinic with your patients.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you did get interested in gut health and pursue a specialty in gastroenterology. Where did that all start? I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of like just shoved down the residency path without so much choosing. So was it a conscious effort of yours?
It's funny. I think that you bring up a good point in terms of like kind of being shoved down the residency path, because people, it's amazing how little you know when you're being forced to make choices that will define your entire life. So basically the way it works is during your third year of med school, where most people are 25 years old, you're trying to choose what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And you really know nothing about it. I mean, you're a medical student, you know nothing about sort of the way it all works. So I thought I was going to be a pediatrician. During my third year of med school, you do rotations. You do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I love children. I love my children. I love other people's children too. But I wasn't happy when I was doing my pediatrics rotation. And I think part of it is that I realized how hard it is when the child is just sick and you're trying to convince them to do something and they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, and in my very limited pediatrics experience in pediatrics class, it's more of dealing with parents than kids.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is the parents? It felt like there were two basic types of parents: the ones that are down your throat and like are ready to kill you if you do anything even slightly wrong, and then the ones that are disturbingly casual and aren't really engaged, and you can see that like their negligence is affecting their child.
Mm-hmm.
And so they used to drive me nuts, the parents. So anyway, I opened up my sort of candidacy and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And what I loved is I really loved internal medicine, where I would take complex medical problems and peel apart the layers to find solutions. And that's what I loved about internal medicine, but I couldn't see myself in a clinic all day, every day. I just couldn't do that. I needed something that would allow me to use my hands. So I started thinking about, well, what is something, a specialty that will give me a little bit of both? And that's how I ultimately came to gastroenterology, where I spend about half of my time doing procedures. Like I do upper endoscopies, I do colonoscopies. And then I spend half of my time in the clinic talking to patients, understanding their problems, and then peeling apart the layers and creating action plans or solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I love the most about my specialty is, I think about, well, what if I had become a cardiologist? And if I was a cardiologist, I would just be thinking about a heart that squeezes 90 times a minute. And it's like, it's incredibly, I mean, I hate to call them out like this, but it's kind of a simple thing. And with the gut, I get to be the expert of the esophagus, the stomach, the pancreas, the liver, the spleen, the small intestine, the colon, even the hemorrhoids. I get all of it.
You get all of it. Yeah. And as a naturopathic doctor, we've got a saying that runs, an old school saying that health starts in the gut. And it really is the way I have learned and really see it. It is our interface with our outside world. We're like a donut, and we need to be conscientious of the health of the inside of that donut that is our outside world. And we know it is covered with a microbiome. It's one cell thick, and it's something that is totally abused and neglected in our world today.
Benjamin, you nailed so much that's important right there. And, the naturopathic community has been talking about this forever. I mean, forever, going back before your career or my career, the naturopathic community has
Totally.
been talking about this. And the Western,
Hippocrates, right?
well, right. And Hippocrates, is 3,000 years ago. And he is the founder of Western medicine, but we lost sight of it. And I kind of think what happened is, as I pieced together, like, how did Western medicine get so off track? Which to me it is. And this is coming from a Western medical doctor. How did it get so far off track? And I think that what happened is we emerged from World War II and we had just discovered penicillin. And we're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like, look at how powerful this is. And we started doubling and tripling down on pharmaceutical development with the idea that, oh, we'll fix our problems with pills. And in that process, we lost sight of the most important thing, which is our diet and lifestyle and natural approaches.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. This battlefield medicine is in full force still, and we're facing the repercussions of it. And there is a medical transformation into one that's more gentle, lifestyle, interventionally based, and you're part of that, of course. But it is interesting that you kind of mix and match this hands-on endoscopy, colonoscopy. I'm sure you're also removing pathology in that process, and obviously you've got this understanding of prevention and maybe even reversal with a fiber-fueled diet and lifestyle. So yeah, how do you, I'm always curious about how you really weave this conversation of prevention and lifestyle intervention into your practice, where I'm sure a lot of people are just coming to see you to cut something out, or make sure that they can continue on their potentially damaging lifestyle without facing the repercussions of cancer or some digestive chronic complaint. So how do you weave that and balance that in your clinical experience?
I deal with people who are suffering with things that are affecting their quality of life, and so think of all the digestive symptoms: heartburn, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, blood in the stool, hemorrhoids. I mean, there's so many different things that you could go down the line, and what they are is they are things that can drag you down, that can make you miserable, that can make you not enjoy your day-to-day life. And for every single one of these things, when I start to think about, well, what's the root of the problem? What I discover is that the root of the problem is damage to the gut microbiome. And the term that I would use is dysbiosis, but I understand where some people might come in and use the term leaky gut. We're talking about the same thing. And so these patients, the reason why they're in my clinic is because of damage to their gut. It's because of dysbiosis. This is the reason that they're manifesting the symptoms that they are. And I often find that I will look at my patients' medical issues, their past medical history, and you just start seeing patterns where you go, oh, they have anxiety, depression, they have migraine headaches, thyroid disorder, they have seasonal allergies, and they have this autoimmune condition, and eczema, whatever it may be. And you go down the line and you go, gosh, they're here with me for their digestive issue. But like, literally, this damage to their gut is tied to every single one of their other medical conditions at the same time. And so as a doctor, I can't erase that from the way that I think. I can't change that. And it compels me, and my passion for wanting the best for my patients compels me to figure out a way to introduce that. How do I fix the root of the problem? Look, I can patch it up with a drug, but how do I actually get at the root of their problem, which is damage to the gut? You can't do that with a drug. You can't fix that with a drug. You need to get to their diet and their lifestyle. And so it compels me and drives me to have conversations that maybe other people in my specialty would say, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. And I just don't care, because that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to help the patient. The patient needs my help. They need solutions. And to me, the solution is not to cover it up or to patch it or to put a sheet over it. The solution is to attack the root of their problem and correct that.
What
And
a
so
novel
that's,
concept.
it's amazing how that has become, like, people will label this as progressive.
Yeah,
You know,
what a novel concept, actually helping people and fulfilling probably your passion of what got you into medicine.
people will reach out to me and they'll say, "You're such a progressive doctor." I'm like, "Am I?" This is the basics. This is
Mm,
the basics. People should be taught how to eat. They should be taught how their lifestyle can affect their health.
yeah.
And it's just fundamental.
Yeah. So you brought up the point that really at the root of a lot of digestive complaints and disorders and other health diseases is this microbial imbalance, dysbiosis. And you said it could also be known or called leaky gut. Could you explain how dysbiosis could also be seen as leaky gut, like the connection between healthy gut microbiome and a non-leaky gut, like how that happens?
Sure. So I think it starts with understanding what is occurring inside the body when we have a change into dysbiosis. You have to start with what is a healthy gut. A healthy gut has balance, it has harmony, it has a diverse population of species. There are enough good guys to suppress the bad guys. And we use the word eubiosis. Eubiosis is a healthy gut. And when you make the shift, what starts to happen is you disrupt this harmony and balance that I'm describing. You see less good guys. The good guys are no longer able to suppress the bad guys. So you see the emergence of more inflammatory microbes, things of the variety that many have heard of, like E. coli and Shigella and Salmonella. You see the emergence of these inflammatory microbes. And most of the time, what you also see is a loss of diversity within the gut. Now, let me take a step back for a moment before I continue down the dysbiosis path and just say that all ecosystems on this planet have the same general way that we measure their health, whether you're talking about the Amazon rainforest or you're talking about your gut microbiome, you personally listen right now at home. The way that we measure the health of these ecosystems is biodiversity. Biodiversity leads to balance. It leads to harmony. Every single creature, every single plant, every single organism that's alive has a role in that ecosystem. And when you start to remove pieces of that puzzle, you can create holes that cannot be filled. And that's true in your gut too. So when you lose the diversity of microbes, it creates problems. And here's what ends up happening. Less good guys, more bad guys, loss of diversity affects the lining of the colon. You see the breakdown of the tight junctions, which are essentially like spot welds that hold the cells together. These cells that line the colon are meant to be a barrier, a wall that protects you. And when you break down those tight junctions, they open up. And now there's nothing to stop the contents of your intestines from sneaking out. Some will call it intestinal permeability, increased intestinal permeability, but you could just as easily call it leaky gut.
Yeah. So
And
the
what's
root
actually,
cause, yeah. So the root cause of leaky gut, increased intestinal permeability, and also food allergies, food intolerances is decreased or less than optimal microbiome diversity.
so I have looked into this. I became very curious with this specific question at one point in my career as I was exploring the use of the microbiome in human health, like in my clinic. Because the question is, can you have leaky gut without dysbiosis? And every study that I found where they looked at the microbes and at intestinal permeability at the same time showed that it's a part of the same package.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Dysbiosis and leaky gut are part of the same package. So someone may call it, leaky gut. They're referring to the increased intestinal permeability, but that's a consequence of the alteration or damage to the microbial populations.
So taking a step back, you mentioned, and I'm very glad that you did, that in all ecosystems on planet Earth, a sign of health is diversity. So how might a human being on planet Earth assess their diversity and the health of their gut. Is it safe to just assume that you've got a quote unquote healthy gut if you don't feel pain, if you go to the bathroom every day? And are these safe kind of symptoms that can guide us to say, hey, my gut diversity must be pretty good if I don't have any symptoms, or should we be thinking in some other direction?
I think so. The way that I would frame it is this: there are the symptoms and signs that your gut is currently unhealthy. All right. So people that have these digestive symptoms, people who are manifesting these conditions that are associated with dysbiosis, which, by the way, it's a laundry list and it's all, spelled out in chapter 1 of my book. You're going to get into this immediately. Those things are clear cut that there's been damage to the gut. The people that I see in my clinic, 100% of them have had damage to their gut. The question you're asking me is, how do you know it's a healthy gut? How do you know that it's the opposite of that? And the problem is that there is no test that I would say can provide such reassurance that you take your foot off the gas. Because I think that a healthy gut is a manifestation of your day-to-day diet and lifestyle. The food that you had for lunch today is already having an impact on your gut. And no matter who you are, this is where I truly believe gut health matters for all of us. The person who is healthy should just as much be doubling down on the importance of gut health as the person who is not, because you don't want to wake up one day and have Crohn's disease or have some other condition that's associated with damage to the gut.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're saying this, because I think we, back to kind of the current or past paradigm of medicine that we're transitioning out of, is like we experience these acute manifestations and assume that it must be what we ate yesterday or what we did yesterday or what we did this morning that caused us to experience what we are feeling now. But it's just the sum total of the choices we made over the last decade or more of our life. And we've got to be conscientious of these choices on a day-to-day basis, regardless of how we are feeling in the moment, knowing that it's it's like it's all adding up.
Yeah, you don't want to one day wake up and have some new medical issue that you can't just take away.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I agree that it all just adds up. And that's where actually one of the things that is a focus in my book is creating healthy habits. Because it's like this: you can smoke a cigarette. I don't think there's anyone that would say that smoking a cigarette is good for your health, but I get that some people just want to have a cigarette. Okay, have a cigarette. But the problem is when you have a pack every single day and you compound that over years, that's how you develop lung cancer, right? One cigarette by itself is not going to hurt you. The same is true of the opposite. You can have a salad, but one salad is not going to save your health. What it is it's about creating healthy habits. What is the constitution or makeup of your diet? What is the constitution or makeup of your lifestyle?
Yeah. And that's kind of the $1 million question right there, is kind of put another way that a lot of my clients often get in the habit of thinking, like, how much can I get away with still feeling pretty darn good? And you bring forward in your book something about 90%. So can you talk about really, we obviously, we're talking about a whole food plant-based diet. And you're suggesting that 90% adherence to a whole food plant-based diet is generally good enough for most people, from my understanding of what you're kind of conveying in the book. Can you talk about how you come to that conclusion, and when and if somebody might want to go 95 or 100%, and just entertain that topic?
I think that my goal with this book, just to kind of give you an idea of where my heart is at with what I'm presenting here, is my goal is to talk to the person who's eating the standard American diet. And their diet is 10% plants, 60% processed food, 30% meat, dairy, and eggs. I mean, they're getting 6 times more processed food than they are plants, 3 times more animal products than they are plants. And I want to meet them where they are, because that frankly was me, 7 years ago. That was me. I was like 5%, 10% plant-based. And I want to meet them where they are, and I want to walk them on this path to better health. And the science is there. We have scientific consensus. We all agree that a plant-based diet, a plant-centered diet, is the path to better health, not only in your gut, but throughout your entire body. A big part of it being healthy throughout the body is because of the effect on your gut. I want to move you from 10% to 30%, from 30 to 50, and I want to keep pushing you. And I think that the point from my perspective is this, because what I do say when I talk about 90%, from a scientific basis, my justification for 90% is that the blue zones are 90% plant-based. And I don't feel that there is adequate study for me to say that you have an unhealthy diet if you are 90% plant-based. I do think that it can be better. And one of the things that I say when I describe the 90% is I am willing to bet that when you get to 90%, you're going to want even more. And the reason why is because that's what happened to me. So I don't take my foot off the gas at 90%. I continued down the path. And when I went because I was pescatarian for several years. And when I got rid of the fish, the eggs, the dairy, when I got rid of those things, I lost another 15 pounds instantly. Mm-hmm. So to me, I am thriving on a 100% whole food plant-based diet. I feel that that is the best diet for me. I feel like that would be the best diet for most, if not all people. But when I talk to the person who's 10% plant-based, I want to basically capture their attention and guide them down this path without necessarily the intimidation or the concern that it's an all or nothing phenomenon. Mm-hmm. You know, because for me, I just going back to where I was, if you said to me, hey, Will, you got to be 100% plant-based, I'd be like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And I don't think that's possible. So I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So in your book, you kind of gamify this by giving out plant points, which is pretty awesome. And I think about a lot which is essentially counting the number of plants that you are eating in any given week. And it really, the goal is just to eat more plants and more types of plants. And yeah, that kind of gamification and just, the goal of just getting more plants, it doesn't necessarily mean strictly eliminating the animals, but kind of just going in the direction of crowding out the animals. And as people generally feel better, I witness it too, for sure, that people just want to continue on feeling better. I do wonder, from your perspective, people who are healing Crohn's disease or, some inflammatory bowel issue, some chronic digestive complaint, do you see like people who, feel really well, like eating a 90% plant-based, whole food plant-based diet, and then they kind of go a little too much off of their protocol and need to adhere maybe 95 or 100%. And I think that I often see a lot of people who have sensitive guts, and you talk about this in a chapter in your book as well. And sometimes it's like some people do benefit from really adhering to a whole food plant-based diet 100% for some period of time, maybe as they allow their gut to heal. Yeah. What's your experience and kind of insight on that topic?
Yeah, no, I think that you bring up a great point, which is what we're talking about is the person who has the most deeply damaged dysbiotic gut. When you get to a place where you have inflammatory bowel disease and it's actively flaring, it's flaring because you have dysbiosis and it's contributing to dysbiosis. It basically is taking you deeper into the hole. And this is a person that, from my perspective, the solution is with a plant-based diet. I wouldn't sit there and look at the person with ulcerative colitis and look them in the eye and say, stop at 90%. I would be pushing them towards 100% because you need every advantage. This is all hands on deck for the purpose of fighting your condition. And what I've seen is, let me just say, my approach is this. Some people say, hey, I can't do that. Yes, you can, but you got to give yourself time. It's going to take time to make this change. And in order to be successful, from my perspective, I need to put the fire out. I'll make an analogy to a forest fire. When you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease and it's flaring, you wouldn't try to repair the forest while the fire is still burning. You got to put the fire out, and then you grow the forest back. And so when I'm taking care of a person who has these conditions, I typically will use medicine to put the fire out and get them into remission. And when they're in remission, that's when I am doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the opportunity to use a plant-based diet to transform their microbiome, to get it back. And when you get your microbiome back, then you actually are going to be in a position where you can fly without the drug and keep yourself in remission. You can call it a cure if you want to. If you never flare again, it is a cure. And your diet can be the thing that fuels that. And in the book, I actually lay out, sort of the pathogenesis, like the way that people develop Crohn's disease, which has been very well explained. And it has to do with the microbiome, and it has to do with the absence of short chain fatty acids, which we get from fiber. So if you want to reverse that process, then you need to fill in the gaps of what your body is missing. And that basically means that you need the short chain fatty acids from a wide variety of plants in order to successfully restore a healthy gut microbiome.
Yes, and the short chain fatty acids you call postbiotics, which I'm not in gastroenterology land as much as you are, obviously, and I haven't ever heard the term postbiotic, but that's
most people have not. It's oh my gosh, this is
a new term, or you? Yeah,
this is a new term.
Okay.
All right, this is a new term. I did not make up this term, so I wish I could claim that I had, but this is so exciting because, Benjamin, this is the entire point, is postbiotics. So there's a formula that I lay out in the book. Prebiotics, which are basically food for the microbes.
Fiber,
plus probiotics, which are, like, most people will hear that and think of the capsule that contains live microorganisms, but I'm actually just talking about the bacteria in your gut. Prebiotics, fiber, plus probiotics equals postbiotics. Let me make an analogy. You go to a beautiful restaurant, okay? And they have all these nice plant-based ingredients, and they have a world-class chef. Now you go to the restaurant and, hey, it's nice. I love that they have all these nice ingredients that they sourced from a farmer's market. And I love that they have this world-class chef. But you know what? I'm there for the meal. That's what I'm there for. I want to eat. I'm there for the meal. And that's conceptually similar to what's happening with postbiotics in our gut. Prebiotics are the ingredients. The probiotics are the chef. But at the end of the day, it's not about the ingredients. It's not about the chef. It's about what the chef prepares, because that's what's going to have effects on your body. And postbiotics that come from fiber are healing. They are short chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate that I actually walk you through how it reverses dysbiosis in the gut. All the things that you and I talked about right off the top about altering the gut bacterial balance, about damaging the tight junctions. These short chain fatty acids actually fix that.
Yeah.
They prevent colon cancer. Go ahead, sir.
And I know that a lot of people, they're now available encapsulated as a supplement. Take this propionate, take this butyrate in a capsule. But talk to me how and why that is. I mean, I'm not a capsule kind of guy myself, and I trust that you aren't as well with your fiber fueled plan and everything. But why do we need to rely on our probiotics to make the postbiotics? And why can't we just jump to the postbiotics and pop some pills?
Because there is a balance that exists among these short chain fatty acids, butyrate, acetate, propionate. They are universally accepted as being healing. They are good throughout the body. But the problem is that there is no evidence that you can take a supplement and replace what happens when you eat real fiber.
Just like you can't take a supplement and replace the probiotics that are naturally diversified when we eat fiber.
That's exactly correct. The probiotics that we take in a capsule, when you buy it, off the internet or take it out of the refrigerator at your local store, they don't stick. They don't stick. If you stop taking them, they're gone. They're gone within a couple of days.
And I also like to point out to people who are asking me all the time, I'm sure you get way more questions than I do. Like how can we trust the supplement companies to tell us what our unique gut needs? Like how can we trust that? We are all so unique in terms of our microbial population inside of us. So we deserve better than just some few strains that have been isolated and, you know, X billion times, populated, and just swallowing that and hoping for the best is really doesn't seem like a good, idea to me.
Oh, totally. Well, the reality is this: when it comes to probiotics, the hype is outpacing the science, and that's because these companies have realized and understood that it's a lot easier and more powerful to market something, whether the science is there or not, directly to the consumer, and it's a lot more difficult and risky to actually put your product on the line through a study to show whether or not it actually works.
Yeah.
And so what we see is that the hype is outpacing the science. And what you're paying for when you spend $40 a month is you're paying for a lot of marketing. And you're also paying a tremendous markup in terms of what it costs for them to make that. They can charge you $40 a month because we've accepted that that's what it costs to get a good probiotic. They can't do that to fiber.
Yeah. And I mean, if we just take a step back and look at back to point one of health starts in the gut, and people are waking up to that. And there's a lot of people who have sensitive, disrupted gut, various digestive symptoms, or they have joint pain or any other symptom, and their doctor says, oh, this is because your gut. And then, they're told, oh, this probiotic is going to support your gut health. And we're just very prone and susceptible and vulnerable to be marketed and sold stuff, especially when that meets our pain points, as probiotics tend to.
Yeah, and the same would be true with a butyrate supplement. Many people are apprehensive about changing their diet, and as a result, it's easier to say, "Oh, I'll just take a butyrate supplement." But I want people to understand: you take a butyrate supplement, butyrate's not even going where it's supposed to go. Butyrate when you consume fiber, it's released in the colon. It's released by your microbes, and it's released in balance against the acetate and the propionate. Your gut microbes act as the gatekeepers. They regulate it. They maintain the harmony and the balance that's needed. When you take it as a supplement, it's being absorbed in your small intestine almost immediately, like literally almost immediately. Who knows if it does anything? We don't have studies to say that it does anything. And the follow-up concern is, how do you know that you're getting the right amount and the proper balance against the acetate and the propionate? For example, there have been some studies, like, full disclosure, short chain fatty acids are nearly universally accepted as being healing and beneficial. But there are some studies that raise concerns that an altered gut microbiome in the setting of autism can lead to artificially high levels of propionate. Now, we don't know that the propionate is actually causative of autism. But the point is, what we do know is that alteration of the gut microbes is associated with autism. I think that we all agree on that.
Yeah.
And the point is, we want to keep our gut microbes in harmony and balance. Trying to shortcut them by taking the short chain fatty acid capsule is not going to add to harmony and balance to your gut microbes.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many things that I want to make sure we talk about, and I kind of have a feeling that we won't, so I don't want to rush also. But I want to kind of take a step back and kind of define the microbiome. Obviously this is a few steps back, but you've been talking about the microbiome of our colon predominantly. We know that, there's the phenomenon of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, but the small intestine does have kind of a microbiome of itself. And I've, been tuned into the fact that really all organs and our skin and we're just a bunch of microbes. So could you kind of, what's your definition of microbiome, and then what aspects of that microbiome are we really talking about when we're talking about gut health and ecology?
You and I are entirely human, but we are not alone. And, all external human structures have microbes that live on them. So from the top of our head to the tip of our toes, we are covered in these invisible microbes that are, the naked eye can't pick them up, but they're there, and they are as alive as you and I. And they're not all the same. They all have unique characteristics, just like all humans have unique characteristics. They all bring something different to the story. Now, I said we're covered from the top of our head to the tip of our toes, but they're mostly concentrated in our gut. And the main location by far is our colon. Now, what I'm about to say takes a second to process because it's kind of crazy. So people listening at home, if you need to pause to think about this for a minute.
Digest
Yeah,
it.
Exactly. I said that all external facing structures are covered in microbes. The main location is our colon. Our colon and our entire intestine, believe it or not, is an external facing structure, which is weird to say because we call it the bowels, implying that it is the deepest part of our body. But because it is a tube that is continuous and that starts at our lips, is an external facing structure. It is where we interact with the outside world, is in our gut. And this is where you find the highest concentration, 39 trillion microbes living inside of us. And they outnumber our human cells. We clearly have more microbes than we have human cells. They're made up mostly of bacteria. They also include fungi. Some would call them yeast. They also include archaea, which are the longest living organisms on our planet. They've been around for 4 billion years, predating oxygen. I mean, they've been around before oxygen even existed. And we may have protozoa, some would call them parasites. And then we have large numbers of viruses as well, which are part of the balance. And all 5 of these types of organisms exist in harmony and balance as a part of our body. You have a microbiome in your small intestine. Your small intestine is not sterile. Your stomach is not entirely sterile. There are microbes that exist in our esophagus. So all parts of the gut have a microbiome, but what you see is a gradient. The least microorganisms in the stomach, a little bit more in the small intestine. The further you go into the small intestine, you start to get a little bit more. But by far, off the charts, the majority are in our colon. And when we see things like small intestine bacterial overgrowth, what we're seeing is excessive growth of these microorganisms within the small intestine. They're not supposed to be there in that quantity. And that's disruptive. And it can create issues. It can create symptoms. It can create motility disorders. It can create sensitivity of our gut. Why does that happen? Well, let me just say, first of all, that SIBO is a little bit of a tough topic. I'm just going to be honest, because we're figuring this out right now. We're trying to figure this out.
Tough as in controversial or tough as in clinically difficult to treat?
Tough as in controversial in the sense that it's not that it doesn't exist. It clearly exists, okay? The challenge is this. Even what we consider to be our gold standard test.
Developed at my medical school, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So even our gold standard test, which is to take a sterile culture from the small intestine, typically.
No, I'm talking about the breath test. I'm sorry.
Oh, the breath test. So yeah, so the breath test we compare to an aspiration, a sterile aspiration that you take from the small intestine during endoscopy. Now, Benjamin, no one does that. Everyone does the breath test.
Yeah.
Okay. But the gold standard test, which is what we compare the breath test to, by calling it the gold standard, it implies that it is telling us exactly what's going on and whether or not a person has SIBO. There was a study that came out last May, a year ago, that suggested that even our gold standard test is not accurate. And so we are living in the midst of a challenging scenario because we're talking about SIBO. I'm a gastroenterologist with a gut microbiome book. My job is to talk about SIBO.
Yeah.
But the problem is we are literally in the process of figuring that out. And so it's a little bit hard to pin down and talk with confidence when you know that we're still trying to figure this out in a large way.
Totally. Thanks for your humility in the topic. And there's methane, there's hydrogen sulfide, there's different types of gases, and yeah, it's a sticky topic. And As far as I am concerned, the microbiome in and of itself is a big black hole as well. It's like the bottom of the ocean. We are just literally, scoping out these little bugs. And it's like, people drop the big long bomb of the name and it sounds smart. But the fact of the matter is there's so many different bugs inside of us, and we maybe know, what would you say, like 50 or 100, but how many different diverse species are there?
So if you went back to 2005, we only knew of about 200 species because those are the ones that we could grow on a culture plate, which is the traditional way to identify bacteria. And the following year, we developed a new laboratory technique. And very rapidly, we discovered there were at least 15,000 species. And there are estimates, and by the way, when I say like 15,000, I don't mean living inside of me or living inside of you. The number of species within an individual is somewhere on the order of 500 to 1,000 species. Okay, but globally across the planet, in terms of the human microbiome, in terms of the possibilities of species that you could have, there's at least 15,000. And there are estimates that there may be up to 36,000. We just don't know the complete picture.
Yeah.
And they're all unique. And this is where, Benjamin, if you look at our human DNA, you and I are 99.9% the same. Okay. Literally just 0.1% of our human DNA is different. But our microbiome may be 100% different. It's probably not, but it could be. And so this is where a large part of our bio-individuality comes from. And it affects the processes and the physiology of our body, because the gut microbiome is more than just digestion. It's intertwined with our immune system, with our mood, the way our brain works, with our hormones, with our metabolism, and even, and this one's kind of like crazy, but it's even connected to how we express our genetics. Yeah. So this is where this idea, like you said right off the bat, right from the top, you said, within the naturopathic space, you guys have been saying all health starts in the gut. And you're right. Yeah. It's so true. And finally, Western medicine is waking up.
Thanks to Dr. B, right in the fiber field book. No, it's exciting stuff. And it is kind of it's kind of a new frontier in a sense that we're digging into deep. I've got kind of some clinical questions, and you talk about this, you got a chapter on kind of the sensitive gut. And in my experience, it's tricky. It's tricky. So I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning in might identify with that sensitive gut. So I'm wondering if you could walk us through kind of your top tips of approaching that sensitive gut.
Yeah. So you're right. This is probably the most important chapter in my book. And the reason why is because if I write a book and the only people who can actually do the protocol or follow the plan are the people who are already healthy, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And so I'm reaching out to the people who need me the most. And the people who need me the most are the people who have dysbiosis. As a result of the dysbiosis, they have food sensitivity. And they're the ones who need this diet the most to reverse that dysbiosis. But they're also the ones who are going to struggle the most. And that's the big paradox, truly, that exists. The person who needs this the most is the person who struggles the most. My approach is this. Number one, we need to know what we're dealing with, okay? So I'm saying that all of my patients have dysbiosis. I think it's fair to say that most people who have food sensitivity have dysbiosis. I think it's fair to say that. Mm-hmm. But there may be alternative issues that need to be dealt with. And so for me, if it's my patient, I am taking a thorough history, and I want to make sure that I'm taking specific things off the table. Because if those things are present, they need to be dealt with. The solution is not plant-based diet for every single person who walks through the doors on day one, right? The solution is, what do I need to do to ultimately get my patient on a plant-based diet? But is there anything I need to tackle first? one of the big ones from my perspective, that's, I think, wildly underrated, people don't realize how important this is constipation. Constipation is the number one cause of gas and bloating in my clinic. Manifests with pain. It can be pain that's so sharp and intense you think you need to have like your gallbladder or your appendix taken out because it can be that intense. It causes nausea, causes a loss of appetite. You just don't want to eat.
Yeah. I'm just giggling because I'm thinking back. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I had an episode of just intense, excruciating abdominal pain. My mom took me to the ER, got some abdominal ultrasound or x-ray, I don't remember. And they're just like, it's poop. You're filled with poop. And, obviously it was a relief, but yeah, no, I remember that firsthand.
Yeah. And there's so many patients that I see that are like this. And the funny thing is many of them actually poop every day. And they don't realize that you can poop every day, but if you're not really emptying your bottom, then you're backing up. And some of these patients, it's kind of crazy and mind-blowing. You can have diarrhea. And we call it overflow diarrhea.
Right.
And what's going on there is that you have a column of stool that's stuck, and the solid stuff backs up, and the liquid sneaks through the cracks and the crevices and then comes out the bottom as diarrhea.
Thanks for the visual. Yeah.
And I'm so comfortable talking about this.
Yeah, me too. And I'm sure everyone else really appreciates it.
So, and the irony is this is a person with diarrhea, and the solution is to make them poop. And so the point from my perspective is in the book, I lay out some of the ideas about what you need to tackle before you start your plant-based diet. And this is one of the big ones. If you have a constipation issue, I will always work to get that person into a better rhythm before I start to ramp up the plants in their diet, because they're going to fail. Because
doesn't ramping up plants support normal rhythm, or you're saying not necessarily?
So if you are severely constipated, it kind of comes down to most of the people who are in my clinic, it's not mild. What they're dealing with is moderate or severe. Mm-hmm. And in that setting, when you introduce fiber, they get a lot of gas, bloating, discomfort. It actually exacerbates their symptoms. And there's these interesting studies that I referenced in the book where they show that constipation causes gas, and gas causes constipation. So if you overshoot, like fiber, to me, I'm all about fiber, but fiber needs to be introduced properly. If you overshoot and you do too much, you can actually contribute to the symptoms.
Yeah.
So
100%.
You need to start low, go slow, and introduce over time. For some people, doing that and drinking more water and taking a walk after dinner, they'll mobilize and they'll get into that rhythm, and they'll be good. Many of the patients that come to see me, they're beyond that. It's more severe, and I need to get them into that rhythm. Once I get them into that rhythm and they're pooping, then it's so easy to drop the fiber down in there. And now what you're doing, many of my patients will say, well, I don't want to have to take anything for constipation. And my thing is this: let's get you pooping, and then let's fix your diet. Because when you fix your diet and you open up your diet and you're getting more diversity, your microbiome is going to heal, and you're not going to need anything for your constipation at that point.
So when you're talking about fixing constipation, are you talking about pharmaceutically, like, stool softeners or herbs or hydration?
Classically magnesium.
Magnesium?
Classically magnesium. I love magnesium to start. And I will pair it with a prebiotic, so a fiber supplement. So many times what I will do, and by the way, just, I think
you're not practicing medicine. Yeah.
Knows this, but I'm not giving medical advice. This is something you need to talk to your doctor about. But many times what I'll do for my patients is I'll have them drink a bottle of magnesium citrate. And the goal there is disrupt the fact that it's backed up, clear out the colon, fresh start. Now that it's a fresh start, let's maintain the rhythm with the daily practice. And the daily practice for me is magnesium before bedtime combined with a prebiotic fiber supplement. The magnesium is great for basically maintaining the softness of the stool. So it acts like a stool softener. It helps to keep things moving through. It's a cathartic. It is not habit forming like senna. I worry about senna. I also worry about aloe, by the way.
Yeah.
and cascara. Those three are all stimulant. So it is not habit forming. And by the way, magnesium, great for migraines, great for anxiety, great for insomnia. And that's why it's a nice thing to take before bedtime.
Cool. So get the bowels moving, up the fibers, low and slow. And any other tips for the sensitive gut?
I think that the key message is this: your gut is like a muscle. Your gut is like a muscle. And what that means is you can train it, you can make it stronger. You can also, if you don't handle it properly, if you don't train it or exercise it, it will grow weaker. So, for example, let's talk about beans. All right.
Yeah.
They're so good for the microbiome. They are foundational foods, but they are high in fiber and they're high in resistant starch. And for the person who has a damaged gut, the fiber and the resistant starch, if you go and you get the 4-bean chili, it's overwhelming for the microbiome. What you need to do is you need to reduce it down. All right. If you eliminate it entirely, if you get rid of it completely, the microbes that thrive when you eat beans will waste and grow weaker, and they will disappear. And then a year later, when you go, oh my gosh, that fad diet didn't work, and you say, I'm going to reintroduce beans.
That plant paradox must be for me.
Right. Right. And then a year later, when you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not getting anywhere, you're going to struggle to reintroduce them because your gut got weaker because you have not been exercising it. Yeah. So the key is, when you got a damaged gut, think of it like rehabbing your arm, right? So if my arm is in a cast and it comes out of a cast, no matter how strong I was in the past, I need to there's a process to get my arm back. And I need to start super low, lifting weights. It might be 2 pounds. And then next week it's 3. And then it's 5.
Yeah.
But there's a process that you go through. You have to have the patience. You also have to acknowledge and recognize that there may be some discomfort that comes with that process. And then you work over time to build your arm back up until it's strong to the point that you're thriving. You don't need to be worried about it so much. It just exists and thrives and is strong because you built it up.
This is reassuring hearing this, because this is totally my approach for the sensitive gut. I often talk about bean counting. You literally by the spoonful, or maybe even by the bean, just ramp it up. And the other thing that, obviously this is a whole tangent in and of itself that we don't have time to go down, but most people who I see who have a history of chronic digestive upset also have anxiety related to food, and that food's going to give me anxiety. So they shut down their digestive system. They get into sympathetic, nervous system mode, and they get issues as a result. Right. So, what's your experience with that kind of gut anxiety axis?
This is such an important point that not enough people are talking about, which is that for the last 20 years, the solution has always been some variation of restriction. For the last 20 years, it's always been get rid of them. Beans, grains, gluten, go down the line, and they keep whittling away at our diet. And what they're doing is not fair, because they are creating a separation between us and our food. We shouldn't be separated. We shouldn't be viewing our food as a monster or as the enemy. We should be viewing our food as having health benefits and nourishing our body and bringing health into our life. People deserve better. What we have done is we have put people on a spectrum of eating disorders. And it's what you just described, which could be mild anxiety around specific foods that you're concerned may cause symptoms. That's a mild form. It could go far more extreme, go through orthorexia and get into anorexia and bulimia. All of these things, we have studies. Believe it or not, the study, Benjamin, was done at the University of North Carolina, where I was for my GI training, showing that people that have eating disorders, it causes harm to their microbiome. And you create a vicious cycle where your anxiety around the food is actually harming your gut. And as a result, you then are becoming more symptomatic when you go to eat that food. People deserve better. And that's why I feel like it's time for us to swing the pendulum the other way, to say the best diet is not the restricted diet. I'm not going to give you a list of 50 foods to not eat, or in some books, 80 foods. I'm not going to give you a list. You know what I'm going to give you? One rule: abundance and diversity. That's it.
Love it.
Focus
Yeah.
on diversity of plants. That's it. And
Yeah.
focus on the healing benefits of the food and the positives. And let's get more variety in our diet and enjoy it and celebrate it. And guess what? Your microbiome will thrive as a result of that.
Such an important point. I mean, yeah, I worked in my clinical training in medical school. I was on a digestive focus shift, and 99% of those patients had extreme food anxiety because they were used to getting symptoms from eating the wrong foods and being more and more restrictive, to the point of like an elemental diet, right? Where they're put on this elemental diet, which is essentially just, a fast with the basic nutrients that we need to survive. And that is like how some people lived. And it was heartbreaking. And I just had this kind of mind, you know, insight,
Tiffany?
this
Yeah.
kind of insight where, it's like we know that our microbial diversity is essential for all aspects of our health, like we're talking about, including our mindset and well-being. And that is obviously a whole nother topic in terms of the microbes and our mood. But like that, we need to intervene somewhere. And it seems like the place where we have the most power of intervening is taking a pause, exhaling, relaxing, and focusing, like you said, on the simplicity of just increasing diversity of plants in the diet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's time for us to get back to enjoying our food. It's time for us to let go of macros and, calorie counts and weighing our food. It's time for you to be able to shop without a laundry list that you're not supposed to buy, and instead shop with the idea of you should be excited by what you can buy and there are no limitations. And,
Awesome.
and then you introduce it and you exercise your gut. And we all have strengths and weaknesses in our gut. Some foods you may do better with, and some foods you may find that you're not as able to tolerate. And you just back off a little bit and you increase slowly over time.
Awesome. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. So cool to talk with a gastroenterologist who I definitely see eye to eye with. And, I'm just curious, like out of all this, because we covered all this, evidence-based information about the gut microbiome and how diversity of the gut microbiome is essential for gut health and all aspects of our health, I trust, therefore, that all of your gastroenterology colleagues advocate for a whole food plant-based diet, right?
Gosh, I wish that were true. I'm working on it. I mean, what I'll tell you is this: I have met, and I'm honored and humbled by this. I've met other healthcare practitioners, not just gastroenterologists, but across all spaces of health and wellness, who are interested in what I'm doing. And what I want them to know is that this is more than just like an intuitive approach. This is more than just rational. The science is saying this. The science is there. It's already there. We don't need more studies. The scientific evidence is already there. And when you read my book, one of the things that I'd like for people to know, including these healthcare practitioners, is that the science was the guide. It was the compass in my book. And all 600 references are completely available for free. Whether you buy my book or not, I'll give them to you for free on my website at theplantfedgut.com. And I put in there an entire, I call it the science of fiber fuels. But what I really want is I want to help people who are confused, because I feel for the layperson who hears someone say lectins are going to kill you and destroy your gut, and then hears me say you need more beans. And they're trying to figure out, well, how am I supposed to find the truth in all that noise? And I want to give you the basic fundamental tools that you need to understand what is high quality science, as opposed to what is a gimmick and a person who's trying to sell you a supplement.
Yeah. Super important thing, because we can get any information that reassures our, confirmation bias at any point in time on the internet these days. So yeah, having an open mind and really seeking the truth is becoming more and more important. And it's like common sense, but not so easy in practice.
And the reality is that you deserve to find the information that is going to help you, even if that is the information that you don't want to hear. You deserve to find something that guides you closer to the truth. When you search for what you want to hear, that's not helping you get closer to the truth. Like you said, that's confirmation bias. And all that does is lead you down a path that is further away from the truth and the health.
Yeah. Well, I think we've both found our truth in this way of eating and living, and it sure does feel good. And like what you just said is a good reminder to continue to walk in this world with an open mind and not focus in on more and more plants, but be curious about what other things might also enhance health and well-being. Yeah. So the book Fiber Fueled, it's coming out soon. I don't know exactly the date that this podcast will be alive, but should be in the bookstores more or less around this time. And people can find you at theplantfedgut.com and also the Gut Health MD, right?
The Gut Health MD is my social media tag. So on Instagram and Facebook, that's how you'll find me. Plantfedgut.com. I have the Science of Fiber Fueled. I have a COVID-19 guide and other resources there. And then I have a course that I'm excited about that I've beta tested twice with amazing results. That allows me it's a 7-week course that allows me to take a much deeper dive into the important topics of healing a dysbiotic damaged gut.
Cool.
And I'm hoping that launches this summer. The COVID-19 thing has affected our ability to videotape that, but I'm hoping we'll be able to launch it this summer.
Awesome. I can't believe we didn't talk about the immune system and the gut, but we obviously know that that's where our immune system lives and is dependent on as well. But yeah.
Want to do it real quick?
Yeah. Give us your top gut health immune system knowledge bombs that you got.
All right. Real quick. The immune system, 70% of the immune system lives in your gut. 70%. It's the majority. It's separated from your gut microbiome by a single layer of cells. That single layer of cells that I was referring to when we were talking about tight junctions earlier. And your gut, its job is to train the immune system. These postbiotics, I said you care about the meal, right?
Yeah.
These postbiotics, like short chain fatty acids, one of the most powerful things that they do is they affect the immune system. And for people who are listening at home, we're in the era of COVID-19. Immune health matters. You want a healthy immune system? Optimize your gut. This book, Fiber Fueled, is the playbook to optimize your gut. And I am confident that this is also the same path to optimizing your immune system.
Yeah. Easy as that. I mean, in addition to the microbial population and diversity that the high fiber, whole food, plant-based diet offers, obviously it's the nutrient density, the vitamins, minerals, and fuel that fuels your cells that are your immune system, in addition to the microbes that where your immune system depend on as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing how powerful it is too when you take a step back and consider the science clearly shows that this is the optimal diet for the microbiome. The science clearly shows that this diet leads to longer life expectancy and better health, that it prevents most major diseases, that I could rattle off 6 of the top 10 causes of death that would be prevented with this diet. And then you transition out of the entire health conversation, which is where, that's where I talk. I talk about health because I'm a doctor. But you transition out of that conversation and you realize that, this COVID-19 crisis is really showing us the intersection between human health and global health, the health of our planet.
Yeah.
And this diet helps to protect the planet on so many different levels. And in addition to that, it just makes so much sense from an ethical perspective. And I think all of these things really line up and you go, gosh, all you need is one of those 3. And it should be the choice.
Yeah.
we have 3 different great reasons that it makes sense. It's almost too good to be true. It really is.
I know, right? Like the silver bullet right on our silver platter here. Yeah, thanks for tying it all together there. And it's just also a good reminder that, you know, what we're talking about here, your book is not just the next fad diet, obviously. We're beyond fads. Like, we are so beyond fads. So it's refreshing to get some truth that we know is here to stay. And I think that the general population who is used to just going fad to fad, it's time to relax, put your feet up, and enjoy the fiber fueled lifestyle, right?
This is a lifestyle that heals, and it is a journey that will transform your life.
Cool. Well, thank you, Dr. B, so much. And look forward to staying connected on Instagram, The Gut Health MD, and peace and love.
Thank you, Dr. B.